comfortable with this composition.
And they always play it with the Moonkin variant, whereas like a lot of
Yeah.
other teams will end up like swapping it up with like a DK variant. And I actually think that the Moonkin variant can be pretty advantageous for a dungeon like Halls of Atonement, which is the first game or the first dungeon that we're going to see here.
Yeah, what a coincidence there. It might be working in their favor. We'll see. You know, Perplexed, as we know, has just been such a titan throughout this season, and we have so many high expectations for a lot of their performance. So let's see what they have in store for us as they face off against Reload Fulcrum here in game number 1 in Halls of Atonement.
All right, I mean, Halls, you have to agree, though, that Halls is one of those dungeons where DK has like infinitely more value than a Moonkin, right? In direct comparison because of those huge pulls, right? So
I would agree.
I definitely do think that having the DK here specifically is probably an advantage for Perplexed, just because you just do one insane pull into another insane pull, and Moonkin is good whenever you have your cooldowns up, but whenever you have those 3-minute cooldowns down, then you're probably struggling a little bit compared to that DK,
Is he playing
who just
Kyrian?
constantly can do a huge amount of damage. Yeah, it looks like Clix is actually playing Kyrian, which actually favors the damage profile a little bit from these pulls, right? Because it's a shorter cooldown on that Empower
Oh
bond.
my, look at the
So
shine.
interesting to see
Look at Shine's
that
damage.
there's actually doing that. Well, Shine is doing up to almost 50k DPS though, so that's not something that the Moonkin can compete with at all, as they're proccing that 20% pride on their side and also getting that Gargoyle in. Now we have Raging again, which is something that people have been playing around in the past, where they got the Gargoyles lower before they jumped them to get the effect of the Raging, which I'm not 100% sure if it's still possible after 9.0.5, because they have changed a lot of the things. They actually also reduced the Stoneborn damage, but the Charm lasts longer now. So you
Yes.
actually have the pet for longer, but it does a little bit less damage.
Yes, so it ends up doing approximately 25% less damage over the full duration of the Gargoyle itself, just relative. Perplexed did get their Stoneborn there into Raging before they ended up taming it, which would lead me to believe that it probably still does work,
Yeah.
but maybe not. It's hard to say. They definitely have done some work on them. Perplexed, making very quick work of all of the trash packs, spawning their 40% pride there, and starting to down that. Reload Fulcrum kind of hot on their heels. Keeping up, I would say, pretty well. They're definitely doing a good job of making sure that they're keeping up the pace here. Something that they do have over that of Perplex is that they do have a Soothe, an Enrage Dispel for their Raging effect. I don't think that that's like the most relevant thing for like an MDI style dungeon, but it can be useful for like the Shards of Halkias whenever they do their AoE. Like, it can be pretty scary if that is enraged, but with the dungeons being on an 18 and it being on Tyrannical, I suspect Perplex is probably just going to face tank it the whole entire time.
I hope he doesn't accidentally soothe the enraged gargoyle before it gets mind controlled. That's nothing I have ever done accidentally, of course.
Have you ever done that?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, we're moving on as Perplexed is dealing with that trash pack. They're about to finish up that chart, and it looks like they're going to be proccing that 60% pride. Yeah, there we go. So Perplexed are like one pull ahead at this point, right? They're like one whole trash pull ahead compared to Reload Fulcrum, because they just did their pulls a little bit slower. Of course, one whole pull seems like a lot of time, but it's not, right? We're only 3 minutes into this dungeon. All of these pulls are just incredibly quick. So one whole pull really doesn't mean that much, even though it's like 20% trash, but those pulls are just done so quickly in Halls of Atonement. So it really doesn't mean much, as they're now just spawned their pride as well. So definitely not too much of a disadvantage, as Perplex is moving on after their pride. And it looks like Divine Field is gathering a... Oh, he's playing Necrolord.
Necrolord? Yeah, wait.
Yeah. Wow. That's very interesting. Yeah, I don't know. That is actually a very interesting adaptation here by Divine Field, playing Necrolord. You definitely don't get any sort of benefits in this dungeon here from having that Covenant, of course, since it's a 7th-tier dungeon. So there must be a different reason. I mean, we haven't seen any other Demon Hunter play Necrolord except in that Theater of Pain earlier on Rentari. But yeah, I mean, there must be a reason.
He's playing a mini as well.
Huh.
That's because more often than not, I think he would play Aramir for tank Demon Hunter. But it's interesting that he's playing a mini. I don't know. I can't explain why he would play that. Huh. He must believe it's fair
Surely
damage.
he knows something that we don't.
He must believe it's fair damage. I think that's like the only real logical conclusion. Anyways, circling back, Halkias Halkias down to 30% for Perplexed. Halkias at 75-ish% for Reload Fulcrum. Perplexed is going to spawn their 80% Pride off of this mob, kill it, and then Invisibility Potion to the second boss of the dungeon. We do know that Invisibility Potions have been a bit wonky from time to time, especially with the Fleshcraft buff. Like, whenever you have the Fleshcraft buff active, it can actually break you out of Invisibility Potion pretty reliably. And so, with them being inconsistent in this patch, there is a possibility that things do end up going wrong for Perplexed here. It just kind of depends on what's going to end up happening. We have a nice Infernal coming in for Divine, the thing from Beyond spawning and getting taken care of quickly. And doing damage to the Manifestation of Pride.
So, I mean, one thing to note about this dungeon, right? This is a time trial dungeon.
Oh my gosh!
And Perplexed had the #1 seed with 11 minutes 38 seconds. So
Yeah.
you can tell how fast and how quick this dungeon is going to be done. 11 minutes 38, which is just incredible, right? So you can see a skip coming in by Perplexed here as they're
Ryston's
just
gonna die.
running past all of... Yeah, Ryston is in combat. They don't have a Shadow Melt on Ryston, so I have to get him up here. Looks like Swag is just out of...
I'm sorry.
No? Okay, Ashan is just going to be level
he's building
resting,
runic
right?
power. Okay, yeah.
Okay. So they pulled the bus to get the
runic
running fire. Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing? So, that's a pretty aggressive strategy. It's not something you would ever really do on live. You would just like burn like the normal res. But with the Prideful buff ticking there, they just decide, all right, we're going to pull the boss. Ashine, just burn our battle res here. We don't really need it. Or rather, we're going to use that at some other point. We wouldn't use it at some other point. We'll just go for the maximum amount of time. That's how you really have to play against some teams. Obviously, they're, I don't know, decently ahead of Reload Fulcrum, even though Reload Fulcrum is having what is their best run. But you end up practicing and playing a very similar way, just overall. Reload Fulcrum, though, definitely in a position to where they could capitalize on any mistake that Perplexed makes. They're making their way to Echelon right now, whereas on the side of Perplexed, Echelon down sub 40% right now.
Yeah, and I mean, there's going to be a really huge and crucial pull coming up for Perplexed after this boss. Because what we have seen most of the teams do in this dungeon is just pull the whole trash on top of the next boss. And the thing with Raging Ish is that if you manage to not immediately mind control the gargoyles, like if you actually manage to save the mind control for after they're raging, then you gain a huge amount of time because you get that extra damage.
Yep.
Which makes the pull a lot more difficult though, because once you charm the gargoyles, you get a 10% damage reduction on your group. And the gargoyles also do AoE damage with that breath that will help you out with the trash. So if you want to play it risky, you don't immediately mind control them for extra damage for like time. But it's of course incredibly risky, and this pull is already really hard in itself. So let's see how they're doing as they're gathering up everything. You see Divine Field just jumping around, leaping around, making sure everything is gathered while everyone else is using that Door of Shadows to get into that boss room.
Yeah, it definitely is pretty scary, but it's a lot of single target priority damage. Because, yeah, they do that breath, which is an AoE effect, but the real value is definitely the single target. You do see those Loyal Stoneborns not being charmed yet. They are just hitting them down. They're probably going to get them into raging before they end up chaining. Ooh, Sigil of Chains comes out. Now Sigil of Silence, being able to silence all the mobs. Trying to deal with all these Hound Masters and Obliterators and stuff. Because Divine actually started getting pretty scared there. I mean, that is an advantage of the Necrolord. Like, the Fleshcraft giving it damage reduction whenever you're channeling it, it's like really good against caster mobs that aren't meleeing you. And you are able to like dodge and parry and stuff now during the Fleshcraft channel. So that could be a potential thing. They could have seen it as like a way to be able to just mitigate more magic damage, but it's hard to really say.
Yeah, possible. I mean, he also spawned 2 of his demons, and once it exploded on the group, he actually had a decent amount of AoE damage, so it was not even that bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can see the Stoneborn still being up. Reload Fulcrum is struggling a little bit on Echelon here.
Heal him right now.
Ellie's dropping incredibly low on his Vengeance Demon Hunter. But looks like they did manage to recover as the quaking is coming out, and he's just having issues topping that tank. You can see Perplexed did mind control one of their Stoneborns when it was enraging, but it looks like this other Stoneborn is just really not dropping below 30%. They're really not focusing it at all. So it's very possible that they're just completely saving the Stoneborn for the mini boss and the Pride, right? Because now they last longer. So it's very possible that by delaying the mind control by so long, they're actually going to get it for the mini boss and the Pride, which is actually a huge damage increase.
Do you worry that they're going to be able to kill Inquisitor Cigar with the nerf to the Stoneborn? I mean, we've seen in the past where groups have been kind of close on his heal, like.
Yeah, it's possible.
They were definitely close on the heal in the past, but with the nerf to the Stoneborn, how close is it really going to be? We're going to see. So basically, they have 20 seconds to kill Cigar between his casts. And whenever he does his casting, like does the drain on the ads, he heals himself based on how many ads they have left alive. And so basically, what this turns into is they have 20 seconds to burn the mini boss from 100% to 0. Otherwise, they're in deep trouble. They do have the Rage Stoneborn. Okay, they do get it down. And now the Stoneborn is.
Where's he going, the Stoneborn? Where's he going?
He's going on a mission to clean up those neutrals. Instead of helping with the Pride,
he
the
can't
Stoneborn,
control it, right?
He's returning to his people. I mean,
doesn't look like it. I think this was a demon from Divine Field. that was actually a Necrolord demon. Looks like the Stoneborn is gone. Doesn't matter though. They can kill the Pride without that gargoyle. Very unfortunate for them though that they're missing out on this extra damage. I guess because you're not in combat with the Pride for a while when it spawns. But you are in combat with the neutrals at that point, right? So I guess it's just attacking whatever it feels like at that moment. And yeah, they're now fighting Lord Chamberlain here. You can see at the time in the dungeon, they're 11 minutes 25 in. So that's the time where they actually would have already been done in the time trials, right? They're 11:38 is their best time. So they're actually like 30-40 seconds slower than their time trial dungeons, which means that they did something even crazier in the time trials. But they felt like they don't have to do it here, or it could also just be that Stoneborn.
It probably involves pride skipping.
That's possible.
Probably involves the Stoneborn too. It's probably a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah, definitely possible. Yeah.
I mean, the Stoneborn nerf was actually a pretty big deal.
Yeah, true, because they played the time trials before 9.0.5, and it lasting longer is not actually helping them that much, right? You would rather have the higher damage and it'd be shorter in the MDI, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But doesn't stop them from taking down the dungeon in 12 minutes and 19 seconds, nonetheless.
Oh, absolutely. Perplexed putting together clean, lightning quick runs, the expectations that we've been seeing and really setting for them for a while, and they absolutely met it here as they take game number 1 here, Zyro.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is just kind of what we're having to expect from Perplexed if they're going to be able to have any chance of tying up in point standings with Echo here. And, no disrespect to Reload Fulcrum. Yes, they were the team that kind of debuted the Holy Paladin Shadow Priest strat that every team is kind of, tagging along with now. But just because you're the first team to do it doesn't mean you're going to be the best at doing it. And that kind of came to a head here in this Halls of Atonement. Perplexed just kind of outperformed them at every aspect of the game.
Look at the difference between the DK and the Moonkin damage-wise. I think that's that is like what it really comes down to. I thought really Fulcrum played really well though.
Those numbers are not quite what I would expect. You shouldn't look too much at those because a lot of the damage for there is actually coming from the DK being Vinthier, and even on like the first pull of the dungeon, a lot of the dungeon titles is going, oh my god, look at the DK's damage. Yeah, he just had a gargoyle.
That doesn't
gargoyle
count.
Damage. It
doesn't actually count if you're mind controlling it in combat, right? It only counts if you mind control it before the combat starts.
Yeah.
So, and they're not doing that. So it's actually all his damage. Or it should be, at least.
We can double check, for example, like the damage breakdown. Because, I mean, if we're, of course, importing these from details itself, so we're able to just click on it. We're able to look a little bit more deeply into if it is going to be that Stoneborn damage. Because sometimes it's finicky. If you're in combat with a gargoyle, you mind control it, and then you drop combat for a second until you get into something else. So We'll have to see about that. But Zyra, let's start talking about some of those highlights that we've got from Halls. What was the big thing you want to focus on here?
Yeah, this is more of like a big picture thing, but I think it's really funny how strong Holy Paladin is in the context of the overarching MDI meta for the past few years. Night Elf Shadow Meld has been such a powerful tool for so long that people have been incredibly hesitant to run certain classes that couldn't be Night Elves in general. And the funny thing is, Holy Paladins are so strong that teams are now committing to doing skips where you'll just say, well, we need Shadow Meld for this skip. How are we going to make Holy Paladin work? And the answer is just kill the Holy Paladin and res them. It's just like, you'll take the 5-second plus res time loss now just to have that damage in your group. And I think it's kind of hilarious how ridiculously unbalanced Holy Paladin is in this certain aspect of the game, to where teams are just like, yeah, we'll just take that on the chin. 5 seconds, there we go.
I think it's equally
do you remember
that people are playing Shadow Priest Night Fae in MDI because they need to prop up the rest of their group as well and be able to help them out?
It's powerful. I mean, do you remember in Legion MDI, the 4 Druid team with 1 Warlock? And they would always just go back and res the Warlock for all of their skips every single time.
It's funny how we come like the whole way, right? Because at the very start we had those comps where you had one person that was not a Night Elf, and we were always like, is it worth it to bring this one player that you have to rest? Like, is this really going to be worth it for the teams? And eventually they switched away from non-Night Elf classes, and now we went full circle, and now we are back where it's so worth it that it's, you take into account that you're just wasting 5 seconds on resting them. It's totally fine. You have the Ashen Hollow. You're gonna make up for those 5 seconds.
Dude, it's something absurd, like 3 to 4k DPS just by swapping up the healer. Of course, you have to swap into the Shadow Priest, which is like Shadow doesn't do the most damage.
It's fine.
It's meh.
It's
I'm a Zyro. It's fine.
Even with what you would replace it with anyways, right? Like, what are you going to replace the Shadow Priest with in terms of just DPS now, right? Windwalker Monk? No.
Yeah, Windwalker
Hunters,
and
I guess,
Windwalker and MM have been nerfed so heavily, it's basically just DK and Fire that are like the kings of uncapped, like burst AoE and like an MDI style stuff. So like, you don't really have like a great that's actually a really good point, Zyra.
Yeah, well, let's start shift our focus here to Necrotic Wake. 905 changes, I believe it's the Master Assassin legendary that it no longer works with the weapon status. Tell us about that.
Exactly. So Mark of the Master Assassin, which was the rogue legendary that gave them 100% crit, it no longer works with the curing weapons. On top of that, they also changed something with like the robots about pre-getting the buff, but that's not super relevant. It's not super relevant for MDI stuff. That's more relevant for like live key stuff. On top of that, I'm not sure about the interaction with Rune of Power anymore. I know that for a while the Kyrian weapons were scaling with the damage amp from Rune of Power, but
from Weapons of Order.
And from Weapons of Order. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with those, because I know they intentionally whitelisted the Rogue Legendary to no longer work with them, which means that we're not going to see Rogues here. By the way, unfortunate. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
But I wonder who's going to be the weapon holder, and if it's going to be something with like gimmicky things like Rune of Power dropping and whatnot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, maybe it'll just be the tanks because they'll be able to position everybody. Maybe it'll be the same person who was doing it, who was playing Rogue previously, because they've already got the experience there.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. Game number 2, Necrotic Wake. We're getting ourselves ready. Perplexed is up 1 right now versus Reload Fulcrum. Let's see what we got as we get underway.
I think this dungeon has a high degree of likelihood to turn into a fiesta if the teams haven't put in a bunch of practice on this new patch, because with the change to the weapons, it's a lot different.
Definitely, I 100% agree. I mean, you can already see from the get-go the difference in sizes. Like, we are seeing almost all the teams pull their whole room into the boss and just completely annihilating it with that first spear that the rogue has thrown. And now look at the teams. I mean, we see a 20% trash pull on Perplexed side, 16% trash pull on Reload Fulcrum. So things have been slowed down a lot in this dungeon. So everything is a lot slower. Everything is going to be a lot more controlled as well. We have Sanguine that can cause some issues as well. You definitely have to be worrying about that, especially if you want to be pulling trash on top of bosses. So yeah, we'll see how they play this as we see the Goliath being activated by Perplexed.
Ooh,
And
I
I
actually
really like Fulcrum as well.
I really like this from
Oh,
Real
yeah, I
Fulcrum.
like this.
They're
Yeah.
aggressively pulling Blightbone. So basically, they were a little bit slower on their first pull just because of where they were fighting the mobs. But then they're like, this Pride is probably. Oh no!
Battle Rest.
Rest it right now.
You got it?
All right, Last Resort is procced on Reload Fulcrum's side. Everything's gonna be okay. That was he got hit by the boast. He got hit by the boast stun and was sitting there probably without bubble. I would hope he would have used it if he had it up. Honestly, Blightbone's healing. Get him out.
Oh no.
All right, everything's fine. It was just a flesh wound. Perplexed gonna be downing Blightbone here in a second. Reload Fulcrum. That was a scary moment for them, but they were able to recover.
Yeah, so it looks like Perplexed did not have any sort of issues on their first boss. So they were actually pulling a whole trash pack on top of the first boss. So not only like the blind bags and the soldiers that are running around, but like a full trash pack that usually is being avoided on live server keys. Like one of these middle trash packs that just has a bunch of like butchers and vanguards that you want to avoid. And they were just dealing with it because they had the Pride buff, and they also had the Goliath buff, the anime exhaust here that does huge amount of damage, pulsing AoE around everyone and also pulsing healing. So really well like use of that buff for Perplexed side. As they're now proccing their 40% Pride, they still have the Marauder left, but there we go. They just had to deal with the shield, had to finish it off, and then the Marauder goes down. We do see Swagfist was not stacking with the rest of the group, as he still had a little bit of that AoE buff on him. There we go. Now he's stacking with the rest of the group. You definitely want to make sure you're stacking because of that AoE damage and the AoE healing. It's just a damage gain for your group, right? So probably someone was yelling at him and he was like, "Swag, why are you out there? Come in here." But he did move eventually.
I just watched a Demon Hunter get locked on Feldev by Quake King. It's a really, really tragic time. All right, so now Perplexed, using Mind Soothe, great utility from the Priest coming in to be able to walk around those packs. Now Divine is grouping up all these mobs. They're at 49% enemy forces. I suspect they're going to get their 60% Pride off of this. All right, so they're actually pulling the Skeletal Monstrosity in with these Bone Carvers. Basically, this is a really dangerous pull for Divine, and he does not have that Last Resort available to him. So this is something that he has to be really scared of. It looked like they were using the Silence Orb, and by the looks of things, it was probably a Shine, seeing that he's doing 60k DPS. Now, the Skeletal Monstrosity stuck in Sanguine. This is really bad. I would describe this as terrible, actually.
Yes.
The
okay, that's actually a huge time loss.
Divine may die here, Nagura. His cheat death trigger is proc. He does not have Last Resort.
They didn't get the shields done either. The Marauders are still alive. They didn't actually manage to DPS through the shields. And the casts are going off as well, the fears. So this is actually a huge time. Ryzen's going down here, so they do have a Battle Rest. Ashan is casting it to get Ryzen back up, but Divine Field is just struggling. He's out of defensives. He's just jumping around, trying to avoid the damage from these Bone Carvers, the Marauders, but they're so fast. I mean, he's just barely managing to outrun these, and they just don't manage to break through the shields. And that's really what you have to do, right? Like, you have to get the shields done. Now the shields are up. They have to DPS through them. Otherwise, the Marauders are not going down. But it looks like they don't manage to get the DPS out because Divine Field is kiting, right? So Ashine cannot hit the Marauders because they're just running away from him. At this point, Divine Field died and is releasing, but they're just kiting out this pull, but there's still this trash pack alive that they skipped with Mind Soothe. So Divine Field has to wait here until Swag is Mind Soothing this mob. There we go. He managed to get the Mind Soothe off. So now Divine Field can walk past. But yeah, this is just a lot of loss of time here for Perplexed. This is the window for Real Falcon to come back in, but they had mistakes on their side too, as they're up to 4 devs.
They were having some shenanigans with the mini boss and a Prideful at the same time. There was some weird stuff happening on their side with that. I think Ryzen died whenever Swag gripped Divine and then swung the Marauder Cleave straight into Ryzen randomly. That was very unlucky for them. That Sanguine healing was really what set them back the most, though. Oh, here's the Pride. Can you imagine if the Pride spawned in the middle of that too? Just like...
But this might actually still be a little bit of an issue because they still have this monstrosity up. on a decent amount of HP, and they have to kite out of this Reaping Winds. Ashine going down, actually.
Oh!
So they don't have a battle rest. Ashine has to release. So now this might actually be an issue for them because this Pride is going to get so many stacks. Ashine is not even releasing because I guess he cannot go past that, that trash pack.
Yeah.
Because Swag has to Mind Soothe it, and he can't really do that. So, just lots of issues for them here. They have to finish off this Pride without the Shine, meaning it's going to go to really high stacks. Combustion has already been used by Wolf Disco, so they're just running out of offensives at this point to have enough damage.
Yeah, Ryson bubbled. Fortunately enough, though, this is actually an advantage of Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest is really tanky versus the Pride, and they do have ample amounts of defensives. Of course, they do also have pretty decent healing. Okay, Ryson has his wings back up. This Pride is going to be okay, and now they're going to res a Shine. It could have gone better.
Unfortunately, Reload Fulcrum, though, on the other hand, had a full team wipe, as they did a similar pull that Perplexed was struggling with, and they also didn't manage to pull it off. You can just see how much problems these teams are having all of a sudden with this dungeon because they don't have those rogues with that Master Assassin to just one-shot these packs. And of course, this is the first time we actually see any team play this dungeon after the changes. So no team actually knows what the other teams are doing here. So people really have to reinvent their strategies here. They have to come up with something completely new because there's absolutely no way they can pull off these things. Oh, did Swag just grip up a Shine? I like that. So Ryzen is using Invisibility Potion, but Swag actually is Night Elf. So he already walked past here, Shadow Melted off the aggro, and then gripped up a Shine. I like that a lot. Really nice use of just utility, making sure our Shine doesn't have to walk all the way around.
Yep, and now you're going to have Perplexed fighting a Marth. This is honestly one of the pug killers of this dungeon. I feel like this boss, really, really difficult if you don't CC these ads. You do actually see that Shackle Undead coming in on that mage. A lot of the times we've seen in this dungeon where you have like a rogue and a Windwalker monk, so you'll have like a blind and a para and stuff like that. But the Shackle Undead also great utility that can be used as well to be able to get those mages CC'd to where, because basically whenever the Marth does his consume cast, Final Harvest, if the mobs are in a crowd control effect such as paralysis or blind or shackle or whatever, then he doesn't gain any stacks and won't kill you basically.
Yeah, I mean, they also have the Turn Evil, right, by the Holy Paladin. It's actually an ability that I almost forgot exists because you barely ever see it, right? It's like a fear that only works on undead mobs. So it actually works on these, which when I told our paladin, can you just, there we go. He's used it on one of the mages, but it got broken by 1 dot, so a Frostbolt is going through. Very unfortunate. Oh no, Amarth isn't 5%. Everyone's just dropping low. Shine is the only one alive. I think they're going to be wiping. Oh my god, this is going to be a full team wipe. Shine somehow is still alive. I don't know how Shine is still alive, but he's not going to be able to do it. 1%.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, he did it. Shine is a literal god.
That's why he's an MDI champion.
I cannot believe Shine just soloed this boss with all the ads alive.
That's why he's an MDI
wow,
champion.
That was actually incredible. Yeah, this is actually why he's the champion. That was insane. Wow. I thought there's no way he can do that. Incredible. Wow.
What did Divine die? Divine just like kind of died randomly. Was it to warrior
I was
melees?
sure what
like,
happened.
The only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of damage going on. Maybe it was like the breath could have been, I don't know. I didn't really look at
Quaking?
what happened to Divine Field in that moment. Yeah, Quaking is also like an issue that, you know,
I just looked up at like
don't care about
Divine
the
and
tank with
Ryson.
Quaking, but it actually does a lot of damage to him.
Yeah, I just looked up and like Divine and Ryson were just both dead, and I'm just like, wait, they died. Ooh.
Yeah, I wasn't even worried about them dying either.
Oh my gosh,
What happened?
Figure, did you see that? The
No,
Corpse Collector was standing in Sanguine, and Swag just mind controls him straight out of the Sanguine. That's so sick.
Oh,
That's epic.
I like when these kind of people, especially Swag, is not someone who is known to be like a Shadow Priest player, right? So I really like when. Yeah, he's a melee player, right? So I really like when people are adapting to like a completely different role and different class, and then still like min-maxing everything that they can, like mind controlling someone out of Sanguine, that kind of stuff. It's really cool to see how fast these incredibly good players are adapting to those new roles and new classes.
This dungeon is so different now since they've changed the rogue stuff compared to like other weeks that we've seen in an MDI. The Mark of the Master Assassin change definitely has impacted this dungeon a lot. They're doing these pulls one by one now. On the side of Perplexed, Real Fulcrum recently has down to Marth and will make their way up towards the necropolis here momentarily.
Yeah, so there's still a few pulls here that can be incredibly dangerous, of course, because of these stitch works, these creations that do huge tank damage. You have this tenderized debuff that stacks up, and then you also have the mutilate that does a huge amount of damage to these tanks. So it can cause some issues. It also is fortified, of course, so making it even more difficult to deal with for the tanks. They also usually have a hard time kiting in this necropolis because there's really just not that much space to go around. And they're just so fast, these mobs. So sometimes you have a hard time. And also, if you're not in melee range, it's possible that the Stitchworks or the creations actually hit a melee player instead with like a tenderize or a mutilate. So that's like can cause huge issues.
Do you know how they keep this throw cleaver ad like through this, like how they get these mobs to spawn with the Fleshcrafter still alive? Because these mobs aren't supposed to spawn.
No, I don't actually know that.
I tried this on live because I thought that the RP just started whenever all the mobs die except for the Fleshcrafter, and that's not what they're doing. I don't know what they do to this Fleshcrafter to make the RP start for the next polls, though.
Yeah, I don't know that either. That's actually that's something that I've been wondering about too, because the way this gauntlet usually works, as far as I'm aware, is that you have to finish the previous pack to be able to spawn the new ones, right?
Oh,
and
Sanguine!
Oh no, it's healing so much in the Sanguine here. Oh no, and they can't get him out. No. It's just standing in there. Oh no. There we go. Man, that assistant really didn't want to move.
Throw flesh was the top priority there. He was not trying to get out of the Sanguine. Huh. Well, that was something. I get, maybe they like MC the Fleshcrafter or something. That's the only thing that really would make sense.
That's possible. Yeah, it's definitely possible that the MC has some sort of interaction with it, because any sort of CC I don't think works. Like sheeping or something doesn't work, but mind control.
Mind control maybe make it friendly, and
right?
we'll like tether it to the spawn rate. Like that's the only thing that would really make sense to me as a way.
That's
all right, so
totally
now
possible.
Gorgrind, I think. Yeah, so Gorgrind, I don't think these mobs should spawn. Okay, never mind. These mobs do spawn Sanguine. It's so weird to me that those mobs spawn Sanguine but don't give count. Huh. Yeah.
Okay. So that's actually the most like the weirdest thing about Necrotic Wake, in my opinion, is this whole necropolis area.
Yeah.
Because it's just, there's so much trash and it gives so little percent. It feels like I'm spending all this time up there and I should be like rewarded with like a huge amount of percentage. But no. You're like barely getting anything for trash packs that are incredibly difficult to deal with, especially because of these like rot spews that almost like one-shot you whenever, well, on hierarchies. But the tank is just like having so much trouble, and then you like look at the percentage just barely moving whenever you're done with that pack.
Well, the Necropolis used to give 55% enemy forces count, and you would literally skip like half the dungeon just to get to the Necropolis, and that was
true.
That was very quickly fixed. It's interesting that those leftovers do on death affixes yet don't give count. I'm not exactly sure why they're like that. That's so weird to me. All right, so now the Manifestation of Pride being spawned by Perplexed. Ryson got hit by that boast, immediately has to bubble off the stun, otherwise he would have died. Reload Fulcrum on the other side, dealing with their assistants, just a little bit further behind. The issues that they had early on in the dungeon were slightly more costly than Perplexed's wipe and then near wipe on a Marth.
I mean, okay, so here's the thing though, right? Perplexed is like the #2 seeded team right now, and they want to get #1, right? They want to beat Echo in this tournament here to be able to take that #1 seed. But after the performance here, I mean, they could have easily lost this game if Ashine didn't completely clutch that second boss, right? Because it would have cost them so much time if they had a full team wipe there. That Reload Fulcrum easily could have caught up, even though they're up to 9 deaths, right? So Shine really saving the day there as he's finishing off that boss with the rest of his team just being dead. And they just completely annihilated the boss. Where'd it go?
Yeah, I want to emphasize this
gone.
some more because I don't know if this like gets enough credit. It's unreal how much more difficult this dungeon is now since they changed how the rogue carrying the spears really works in here. This may as well just be a completely new dungeon because you've effectively lost like half the damage that the carrying weapons would do, and you saw that reflected basically in the pulls. And honestly, the time of this dungeon used to be something in the 12-minute range. Obviously, these haven't been the most clean run, but this dungeon will end up being like 19 minutes, but it's not a 7-minute difference for how sloppy both of these teams have played. Reload Fulcrum is finishing up Rot Spew, but it looks too little too late. Now Thor dropping sub 50% for Perplexed, looking like they're definitely going to take this one home.
So it looked like... Wolf Disco actually got exiled here. So in the past, we've seen teams use the Shadow Melt, because if you get exiled and you use the Shadow Melt, then you're not targetable anymore, and then it recasts the ability on someone else. And eventually, people would use the grip, the Priest grip, because if you're in the middle of the grip animation, when the exile animation hits you, you don't actually get exiled. But Swag was not even attempting to do the grip here, so I wonder if it maybe got fixed as well with 9.0.5, because immunities got fixed, so you can't ice block it anymore. That's why Wolf Disco didn't even try to ice block it. So it's possible that they also removed those like grip and gateway skips as well. So also this boss got passively nerfed a little through that, because avoiding the exile is a huge damage gain. Even though you do gain that crit buff, but it's not worth it to spend all of this time down there. But Perplex killing off that last boss as they're winning this first series here against Reload Fulcrum. It was a struggle though, but they did manage to finish it off 2-0.
It was a struggle there for Perplex, but I think this is the area where you can most highlight the skill of so many of these different players, especially when they're playing something that's more new to them, especially when, you know, all of the pressure is going to be on the line there. A Shine really, you know, buckling down and finishing that boss fight. We're able to see how Swag has been improving, where, as you mentioned, Agura, usually a melee player, he's fitting into that Shadow Priest role really well. Perplex has just shown their flexibility, their skill here, Zyro, and it is fantastic.